Does RIDGID's track saw have the performance and the features to compare with some of the best? This RIDGID track saw is not brand new, but it's only been out a couple of months now. But does it have the power to cut through some of the toughest wood? And does it have the features to make you comfortable and happy? This is the RIDGID 18V track saw, and specifically it's the model number R48630. Runs on their 18V platform, so it's a cordless saw, brushless motor, and you get two 27.5-inch tracks with it as well. These tracks are made of aluminum, so two of them there, both of them identical except for the RIDGID logo is only on one of the tracks, not sure why, but anyway, you also get these two connectors here that connect the tracks, and make sure when you get it out of the box that all four of your Allen head screws are in each one. Make sure they're not loose in the box. They shouldn't be, but just wanted to give you that advice. And then you get one clamp as well. I do wish they added two clamps to that, or added one clamp, so you had two clamps, because if you're clamping one side, I get it, maybe you could hold the other. And the non-skid tape on the bottom should hold it pretty well, but if you're going to have a clamp, it would make sense to have it at each end. Anyway, regardless, I'm glad they added a clamp in there, period. You get a 40-tooth blade with this as well, 6.5-inch blade, so 6.5-inch plunge saw. And the cool thing about this, there's several cool things, but one thing to notice, it is a true plunge saw because you get the plunging riving knife as well. So the riving knife is going to go down with the blade. Sometimes you'll see some pseudo track saws, or they call it a track saw, and that riving knife seems to be below that blade, so you really can't plunge with it. So this is a true plunge saw. Now right now it's kind of in a maintenance mode, and that's why it's kind of hovering down right here. If I take that out of the maintenance mode or the setup mode or the blade change mode, all I have to do is pull this back to the saw blade, and now this raises up. And so now to plunge, all I have to do is this little unlock tool, which, by the way, really easy to push. You can see with my thumb there, and you can see what's happening up here. There's a little chrome lock right there. When I push this, see that go up, and that's what unlocks it. So right now it's locked, raise that up, and now it plunges down. And I'll show you what I'm talking about with the riving knife. So now, unlock, and as I push down, you see the riving knife is coming down with the blade. And we'll see it more in action as we're using it. And also you'll see if I hold my finger there, that riving knife will also basically stay put until it cuts the track with the blade, and then it will go down into that track. This little window right here is so you can look and you'll see your saw blade. I'll show you after we have it installed. And it just kind of shows what your depth of cut is, which, speaking of depth of cut, that's one of the really nice features on this saw, much like the Milwaukee. And that is very easy to read. And you wonder, why do you have a set of white numbers and a set of orange numbers? Well, I'm glad you asked. So basically we can do at least I think it was about a 2.5-inch plunge cut, more than 2 1/4, but that's without the track on there. So the orange numbers are for if you're not using a track, which, as you can see, it's at least a 1/4 inch tall, and that's going to give you the ability to cut deeper. If you are using the track, then you use, and you can see the little track symbol right here, use the white. So if you want to cut a 1.5-inch depth of cut, then you can set it right there. And if you want a 1.5 without the track, you set it right there. So really easy to read and easy to operate this. Just push the button, locks into place at 1 inch on the track, and you're good to go with a 1-inch cut. So really easy to operate that depth of cut. Obviously max depth of cut at 2 1/8 inches or 2 1/4 inches with the track in place. I believe the box actually says max of cut 2 1/8 inches at 90 degrees. Here on the rear of the saw, we have 2 Allen wrenches. One of those is going to be for installing your blade. We'll use that here in a moment. This other Allen wrench right here, that's for actually putting your tracks together. So you can see right there. So I like that. I like that this is not just hovering around somewhere in the original box, but it's actually on board the tool and ready for you to use that when you need it. You have a dust port right here, and that's going to swivel so it goes into the place where you need it. Sounds like it's got some detents in there as well. It kind of locks in where you want it. Also, you're going to get an internal port of, I believe, 1 1/4 inches and external of 1 7/8, so it fits a lot of your different hoses. And you get an arbor lock right here, so you can push that when you're actually wanting to tighten that blade or remove the blade. And then for bevel cuts are very easy. You have a little thumb screw here on the front and the back, and that's basically just to kind of lock it into place or tighten into place. And when you want to bevel, you can fill little detents at 22.5. So at 0, 22.5, there's a small detent. At 45, there's a detent. And if we want to go beyond 45, we can go up to a 47 inch. Then all I have to do is flip this little lever right here to 47. And now that'll let me go on over to 47. I can crank this down to tighten it. And now I can go at 47 degrees. Loosen this up, go back over, take it back to 45, and now the max is going to be at 45. Also, you can go to -1 as well. So we can go from -1 all the way to 47. Now to get the -1, there's a little slide button right here. And so I need to slide this back, and that lets me come on over to that -1. And then when I'm done there, just bring it on up. And now that's going to take us back to 0. So again, push it back. Let's just go to -1. And then come back, and it's automatically going to stop at 0. Now we get a magnesium base as well as a magnesium cover. And on the magnesium base, we have 2 knobs here. Now what that's going to do, that's going to tighten the friction on the track when we get it on the track. And I'll show you what I'm talking about right here. So you see these little cam tabs right there. So when I turn that, that basically is providing more pressure against the side of the ridge on the track. And again, keeping that more secure. So you can take it to where you don't have any slop in that side-to-side movement just by using that little cam feature there. So you can see when I'm on the track, this will be pressed here, and then as I turn this, it's actually applying more and more pressure against that track. And what we have right here is an anti-tip feature. Now, what this is for, when you're cutting and you're cutting at a 90, there's probably a slim chance that you're actually going to provide enough side force that it's going to tip out of the track. However, if you're cutting at a bevel, so now you've got a lot of weight leaned out there kind of away from the base of that. In fact, if I just let it go, it's falling away. That's without the blade in it. So what you can do is slide this out, and you can see the little tongue that sticks out, and it actually locks that into the track and still slides, but now it's not going to tip over because you've got something holding there. So even though there's weight out there, and even adding a battery and a blade, you're going to have a lot of weight out there, but the saw is going to stay there because of that anti-tip feature. Now let's go ahead and install this blade, and to do that, if we take a look here at the saw, again, we're going to go to this little maintenance icon or the little wrench icon, and I'm going to push that forward, and so I have to push it down, and you'll see once I get to a certain spot, it locks in. And if I turn this around, you'll see that the arbor screw right there is lined up with that hole. So again, push it here, and again, it's now locked in. I have to push this to get here, but there's no detents there. But if I just flip that forward, now my lock is automatically unlocked, and all I have to do is push it forward, and that locks it there. Now I can go on forward again and get all the way down here and lock it, and now it's locked all the way up. So if I want to put that in a box or something like that, that kind of gives it its most compact capability. Of course, that's without the blade in it. Right now, if I had the blade in it, we would have it sticking all the way down here. So we're going to go back. And now flip it again and stop at the first detent. And let's get this blade in. Since this is a blade right saw, meaning when we're using it, the blade is on the right-hand side. That means that our screw or bolt that retains the blade is going to be standard right-hand thread, or righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and not the opposite. Slide that up there, make sure you get it on the arbor, and then also make sure your washer locks in because it is keyed in 2 different spots. And we'll push the arbor lock there. Tighten that. Replace our Allen wrench. By the way, you always want to do that without a battery in it, as you see. And now we're ready to cut. And by the way, with our brushless motor and our 6 amp hour battery, we're going to turn this 6.5 inch blade for up to 5,000 RPM. And we should have plenty of power to make cuts, but let's go see. So we've got the track that actually comes with the RIDGID Track Saw. This is the 27.5 inch long one. We get 2 of these. And then I've also got an option that you can buy. You can buy the 60 inch track as well. You can also buy this in a kit, I believe, with it or bundled or something like that. But anyway, wanted to show you both. If you're going to be breaking down a lot of sheet goods, making a lot of long cuts, would highly recommend getting a one-piece longer or a 60 inch at least track. Now, the RIDGID track is specific to the RIDGID saw. The RIDGID will not work on a Milwaukee track or a Ryobi track or a Festool track or a Makita track. It's going to be specific to their track. Now, they're making a very nice track. The other interesting thing here is that with the RIDGID track, even though, again, our saw will not work on a Milwaukee track, the Milwaukee clamp does work with the RIDGID track. So you can see I can slide that in, and we're going to be able to use the Milwaukee clamp. So these are a little bit beefier than the included RIDGID clamp. Probably don't need a lot of pressure, but if you already have or you want the Milwaukee clamps, they will work with the RIDGID track. Now, again, I'm very happy with the makeup of the RIDGID track. We get 2 of these Teflon strips right here, and that's where the saw actually rides. So you can see that tongue right there fits in that ridge or that groove on the magnesium plate or base, and that slides very easy. Now let me show you how to adjust this. This is not rocket science, but I just want to show you how we adjust it. So I'm going to loosen these up. So that's kind of as loose as it gets. And you can see we can get a little bit of deflection on the track here, and it glides really, really easy. So what we do is we just turn this, we slide this until we get enough friction where it almost doesn't want to easily go. And then we just back off a touch to where it still glides. But we get no deflection from side to side. So now to me, that's ready to go. It's going to be nice and straight and make your straight cuts. And this is also where this little slide out tab, that anti-tip feature, so you can see that engaged, not engaged, the saw will actually come off of the track. So as a safety measure, you may want to always just kind of flip that, and then that's kind of now one with the track. Wherever it goes and any side pressure, it's actually going to be locked into place. Keep in mind, this little piece of rubber here on the right-hand side, that is made to line up with the exact place where you want this blade to go. Now, this blade is actually going to ride right against that rubber. They call this the splinter guard. Now, there's no way to manufacture this to make this exact to whatever saw is put on here, even though it's the same saw every time. So, what they do is, this actually protrudes further than where it should be, and so you're going to make a sacrificial cut on the first cut that's literally going to make this be right flush against the blade on your specific saw. So your first cut should always be not on the stock you're trying to cut, but into some foam board or just hang it off the edge, and we'll show you here in a moment. Okay, so we've got our track off the edge of our material. We're going to take our saw, put it in our track. Now we do want to back this up to where we're sure that it's actually going to cut all the way through and all the way down the end of that material. So you see there, when I come down, the riving knife actually goes down to the blade. Let me pull this battery out. The battery's out. So you'll see here, if this were a solid piece of wood, we weren't cut yet, it would still push that riving knife up until I got down in the slot, and then it would actually come out and get down there and do what it should do. I'd probably recommend to actually be on a piece of foam board that would help secure that splinter guard as you're cutting it. But as you can see, now it's truded up exactly to our blade. One of the great things about using a track saw is I don't have to take a straight edge and draw a complete line where I want my cut to be. You absolutely can, but as you can see, I've just got a little crow's foot right here, and over there. Really, I could do two and have a straight line, 2 points, one plane. Anyway, and all I have to do is line up the actual cut edge on the actual point where I want. Now, keep in mind, everything's going to be cut right of our splinter edge here, our splinter guard. So the edge that it's on, obviously the blade's going to ride on the right-hand side of that. So understand that when you're marking out your sheet, make sure you're not overlapping those cuts. You're going to lose that 1/8 of an inch or so. So I'm just going to put this on those points. And again, if I trust my marks, I don't have to break out my tape measure. Now, if you want to double check, triple check, you can still run a tape, measure to the edge of the guard or edge of the track, and you're good to go. And I'm not using any clamps here. I'm actually just using this tape here on the bottom. There's like foam pieces, and it grips quite well. So you can see, it really doesn't move around. If you've got a really dirty surface, you may want to use clamps, or you may just want to clean it. And then all you have to do is apply a little pressure, and it really doesn't want to move. So I'm going to use this without any clamps on this first cut. Put my saw on, make sure again my friction is set where I want it. I'm at 0 degrees bevel, and I've got my depth set where I want it. I'm cutting some 3/4 inch birch plywood. So not the toughest stuff, but definitely not just a 1/4 inch, bundle of sheet. So I'm going to back this up. Now I could start right here and plunge it. In fact, I'll do that. So. I'm going to stop right there. You can see already we're getting plenty of dust here. So let's hook up some dust extraction and see how much of that we pull away. Now I'm going to back my saw off all the way up to the edge and start over. So you see we're still getting a little bit of dust to the right front of the blade, even with the extraction on, but it's not a lot. And you see we're all the way through our material. Nothing hanging on there. So we definitely pulled away the majority of the dust, but we still have some residual. I didn't expect this to be, a festool that's going to cost you twice as much money. I didn't expect that, but it is pulling the majority of everything. Nothing's coming out in the back of the saw. Everything's coming out somewhere around here. So there could be some better extraction, but again, I think for the money, you'll be impressed with this. So just wanted to let you know there is a bit of residual, but not a lot. Now there's my stupidity right there, not continuing the cut and finishing that cut, and now I've ruined that piece of plywood on that end. Now I do have a little bit of splintering, not bad at all. I think a better blade would probably remedy most of that, but all that should be an easy sand to clean that up. We'll go for another round on this birch. And this time we're clean through. After we turn the extractor on, again, we got a lot of it removed. Again, just a tiny bit of splintering there. But a better blade, again, is probably going to be the answer to that. Now we're going to give the RIDGID a true workout on this Purpleheart. This is every bit of 8/4, so 2 inches thick. Yeah, a little more than 2 inches thick on this Purpleheart. I forget the Jenga score on this, like 16 million, no, I think 16,000 or something like that. Anyway, probably one of the hardest of anything that's actually available for the most part. Really pretty stuff too, but anyway, let's give this a cut and see what we think. Gonna max out our depth here, gonna just go all the way down. And I would recommend before you make cuts like that and cutting into your tables that you make sure your depth is gonna be about right. So a few saw marks from the starts and stops on that Purpleheart. So I definitely recommend having a full battery before you start something this hard. And then that would eliminate those start and stop marks there. But that can be sanded out also. Still impressed that this saw would cut this Purpleheart. That is some really hard stuff. I did have to replace the battery, put another battery in it because it did overheat. But it took about 15 seconds to swap that out, and then it was back and going. We're very impressed with the RIDGID Track Saw. There's a lot of great features on this. First off, the deflection on the track is dead on. In other words, there's hardly any, if at all. You can really tune this to glide very well on the track, at the same time have no deflection left or right. Now, I think a better blade would be in store, and if you're using this for hardwoods, would definitely recommend that. And I think that's really going to help in performance, as well as when you're actually cutting and that ease of cut, as well as less splintering in the end as well. Now, if it cut through this Purpleheart, then it can cut through probably just about anything you're going to be cutting. Did it struggle in doing so? Yes, it did. It actually cut out because the battery overheated, because the battery still showed 2 cells, but it was very hot to the touch. Literally threw another battery right on it. The saw kicked back on and cut right through with no problem at all. Now, that was after we had cut a lot of the sheet goods, but still there was life left in the battery. I'm just recommending, if you are going to start a really hard cut into some really thick hardwood, number one, better blade, that's going to help. And number two, get a fresh battery when you start. Now, otherwise, the cutting was very well. Again, it cut right through. I couldn't push it really, really hard, but I gave it a nice steady pace and it cut through this Purpleheart. So cutting any miters and some typical 2x lumber is going to be no problem for this. And cutting your sheet goods, it's really going to speed things up. And it's a lot easier to cut sheet goods on a table than it is to muscle around a 4x8 or 4x10 sheet of plywood or sheet goods around on a table saw, and probably less dangerous as well. Now, pricing on this is $399 for the kit. Now, that kit is tool only per se, not a battery, so it comes with the saw and two of these 27.5-inch tracks. Now, I would highly recommend, again, if you're going to be cutting down sheet goods or even, long lumber, that invest in a longer track. It's definitely going to save you time and you're going to get a truer cut. Can you put these together and get them nice and straight? Yes, you can. In fact, I would recommend that when you do that, put them together loosely and then lay them on a level or up against another straight edge and get those dead straight, and make sure after you clamp them down nice and tight that it stayed nice, straight, and true. But again, if you're going to be making a lot of long cuts, highly recommend you getting a longer track to do so. Then you're not worried about where that junction may be or if it's going to actually, cut out a line or not. Now, I also noticed they sell a kit form with a battery and a charger as well, and I think it's somewhere around the $600 mark. However, here's what I would recommend, because RIDGID's always running some specials on batteries and tools, things like that. You can buy this bare tool for $399, and then for $179, you can buy a 4 amp hour battery, a 6 amp hour battery, and a charger, and you get to choose a free tool as well. So that's 4 things you're getting for that $179 that will be able to power your track saw, as well as give you another tool to use also. Hey, be sure to check this out for yourself. Also, keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and even TikTok. And if you don't mind, hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And by all means, if you hated our video, well, give us a thumbs down. But would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day. Keep smiling.